It started subtly, like a skipped frame in a bad movie, but the movie was my life. I was just walking home, same old street, same old cracks in the pavement I'd memorized since childhood. Then the lamppost on the corner flickered. Not like a faulty bulb, more like it vanished and reappeared in the exact same spot, a fraction of a second later. I blinked, rubbed my eyes. Must be tired, I thought, dismissing it. But then the brick wall beside Mrs. Henderson's house shimmered just for a breath, and the pattern of the bricks seemed to shift. My breath hitched, my heart started thudding. This wasn't fatigue, this wasn't a trick of the light. This was a tear, a flaw in the fabric of everything I knew. And it was only the beginning. My heart was hammering against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the sudden, eerie quiet of the street. I stood frozen, staring at Mrs. Henderson's brick wall, half expecting it to ripple again, to melt into something else. The air felt thick, heavy, like static before a storm. I squeezed my eyes shut, then opened them again, forcing myself to look around. Everything seemed normal, too normal. The streetlights cast their familiar yellow glow. The distant hum of traffic was just that, distant. Had I imagined it? Had my mind finally snapped under the weight of too many late nights and too much coffee? I tried to take a step, but my legs felt like lead. A cold dread seeped into my bones, telling me that whatever I'd seen, it wasn't a hallucination. It was real, and it was waiting. I needed to get home, to the perceived safety of my own four walls. I started walking, faster now, my gaze darting from side to side, scrutinizing every lamppost, every fence post, every shadow. Each familiar detail felt alien, poised to betray me. Then, the world around me seemed to skip. Not a visual skip this time, but an auditory one. The distant traffic hum, the rustle of leaves in a non-existent breeze, they all cut out for a split second, then resumed, but slightly out of sync, like a badly edited audio track. My own footsteps sounded hollow, echoless, then suddenly too loud. I stumbled, catching myself on a garden gate. The cold metal felt rough under my palm, but for a terrifying instant, my hand passed through it. I snatched my hand back, my breath catching in my throat, staring at my fingers, then at the solid, unyielding wood of the gate. No, no! Panic began to coil in my stomach, a cold, hard knot. This wasn't just a flicker or a shimmer. This was a direct assault on my senses, on my understanding of physical laws. I looked down at my feet. The pavement was there, solid. But as I watched, a small crack, one I'd known for years, seemed to rearrange itself, its jagged edges shifting, reforming into a slightly different pattern, then settling back. My head swam. Was I losing my mind, or was the world losing its mind? I needed to run. I pushed off the gate, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I ran, not looking back, not daring to. My apartment building was only a block away, just one more block. The streetlights ahead seemed to stretch, their beams elongating, then snapping back. The ground beneath my feet felt spongy, then suddenly hard, then spongy again. I could hear my own ragged breathing, but it sounded strangely muffled, as if coming from behind a pane of glass. I burst through the lobby door, fumbling for my keys, my hands shaking so violently I could barely insert the key into the lock. The brass doorknob felt strangely warm, then icy cold, then simply not there for a split second before reappearing. I slammed the door shut behind me, leaning against it, the cheap wood vibrating with my fear. The world outside had turned into a kaleidoscope of impossible geometry, and I was trapped inside its broken reflection. I stood there, gasping for air, my heart threatening to burst out of my chest. The cheap wood of the door pressed against my back, a flimsy barrier against the chaos I'd just fled. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to force the images of shifting pavement and melting doorknobs from my mind. In, out, just breathe. It was over. I was safe. I was home. But the silence in my apartment wasn't comforting. It was too deep, too absolute. The usual hum of the refrigerator, the faint murmur of the city outside, even the creaks and groans of an old building settling, they were all gone. It was like I was in a vacuum. I opened my eyes slowly, my gaze darting around the familiar living room. My worn sofa, the stack of books on the coffee table, the faded rug, all seemed perfectly normal. Too normal. A cold sweat trickled down my spine. Then, a faint, high-pitched whine started. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once, a sound like an old CRT television struggling to turn on, but stretched thin, metallic. My head snapped towards the window, but the blinds were drawn. The whine intensified, vibrating through the floorboards, up into my feet. I pushed myself off the door, my legs still trembling, and stumbled towards the sofa, collapsing onto it. My hands instinctively reached for my ears, trying to block out the invasive sound, but it felt like it was inside my skull. The old grandfather clock in the corner, a dusty heirloom from my grandmother, usually stood silent, its pendulum long since broken. But now, I saw it. The pendulum was swinging. Not with the smooth, rhythmic tick-tock of a working clock, but erratically. It would swing wide, then stop dead for a beat, then jolt violently to the other side, faster than gravity allowed. The hands on its face spun wildly, blurring into a dizzying circle, then snapped back to random times, 4:17, then 11:03, then 6:22. The numbers themselves seemed to waver, to stretch and shrink like reflections in disturbed water. I scrambled off the sofa, backing away from the clock as if it were a venomous snake. The whine in my head intensified, piercing through my thoughts. This wasn't just outside, it was here, it had followed me. Or perhaps it was never just outside, perhaps it was everywhere, and I was only now seeing the cracks. The air grew heavy, like before a storm, but this storm was inside my very walls. The light fixture above me flickered, not just on and off, but the bulbs themselves seemed to stretch into elongated tubes, then snap back into spheres, pulsating with an unnatural, sickly yellow glow. I felt a primal scream bubbling up in my throat, but no sound came out. My voice was gone, lost in the overwhelming static that now filled my world. I was trapped in my own home, and my home was breaking apart around me. The static wasn't just in the air, it was in my head, 1,000 tiny needles pricking at my brain. The high-pitched whine scraped against my eardrums, feeling less like a sound and more like a physical pressure, pushing down on me. My vision blurred around the edges, the familiar lines of my living room wavering, softening, then sharpening into impossible angles. The walls seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting with a slow, sickening rhythm. The patterns on my wallpaper, a subtle floral design, began to swim, the flowers detaching themselves, floating free for a moment before snapping back into place, but always slightly off, slightly wrong. I pressed my hands against my temples, trying to hold my head together, trying to make sense of the sensory overload. My legs felt like jelly, threatening to give out completely. I stumbled backward, bumping into the coffee table. The stack of books I'd been reading, comforting anchors in my routine, suddenly looked alien. Their covers rippled, the text on the spines blurring into nonsensical symbols, then resolving into other languages I didn't understand, then back to English, but with words missing or letters transposed. My favorite novel, a worn copy of Dracula, suddenly showed a cover with a grotesque, distorted face I'd never seen. I reached out, my trembling fingers brushing against the spine, and it felt wrong. Not paper, not cardboard, but something slick and cold, like wet stone, before it snapped back to the familiar texture. The light fixture above me pulsed brighter, then dimmer, casting grotesque, shifting shadows that danced like mocking phantoms across the walls.
The air grew colder, a bone-chilling cold that seeped into my very core. Then, just as suddenly, a wave of oppressive heat washed over me, making my skin prickle. My breath hitched, a silent, desperate gasp. I tried to scream again, to force a sound past the lump in my throat, but nothing came out, only a dry, rattling wheeze that felt alien even to me. It was like my vocal cords had been erased, edited out of existence. Then, my reflection in the dark television screen caught my eye. My face was a mask of terror, eyes wide and bloodshot, hair disheveled. But as I watched, my reflection began to distort. My features stretched and compressed, my eyes became too large, my mouth too wide. Then, too small. It was like looking into a funhouse mirror, but the distortions weren't fixed. They shifted, morphed, creating fleeting, monstrous versions of myself. A silent, guttural cry tore through my chest, though no sound escaped my lips. This wasn't just the world around me. This was me. This was my reality, shattering peace, horrifying peace, and I was being dragged along with it. The overwhelming sense of everything being broken, twisted, wrong was suffocating. I couldn't tell where the glitches ended and I began. My own body felt less like a solid form and more like a collection of pixels ready to dissolve at any moment. The television screen, a black mirror, showed me dissolving. My skin rippled like water. My bones felt like a poorly rendered wireframe, stretching and snapping. My reflection reached out, not a mirror image, but a hand that was too long, too skeletal, its fingers glitching through the glass, through the air towards me. I stumbled back, falling over the coffee table, sending the books scattering. They didn't just fall, they fragmented into shimmering pixels, then reformed, but wrong. The floor beneath me wasn't solid. My hand went through it, not like smoke this time, but like a broken video game texture, revealing a void of pure, unblinking static beneath. A scream finally tore from my throat, but it was garbled, distorted, like a corrupted audio file. It wasn't my voice, it was a cacophony of 1,000 voices, all screaming at once, all trying to escape. The high-pitched whine reached a crescendo, a sound that wasn't sound, but pure pressure, pure agony, drilling into my skull, threatening to split it open. My vision flickered, not just the room, but my perception of it. Colors inverted, shapes inverted, then everything turned to a blinding white, then absolute black, then a dizzying kaleidoscope of impossible geometries. I clawed at my face, trying to feel my own features, but my fingers were phasing in and out of existence, sometimes too many, sometimes none at all. My heart didn't just pound, it skipped beats, then played them all at once, then stopped, leaving a terrifying void before restarting with a jolt that sent pain shooting through my chest.
Then, the walls themselves began to peel away, not plaster, not paint, but the very concept of wall. They unzipped, revealing the same pure, unblinking static that had been beneath the floor. It wasn't empty space. It was a pattern, a code, a million tiny shifting symbols that burned into my retinas. The air grew impossibly cold, then impossibly hot, then neither, then both. My body felt stretched, pulled apart, then compressed into an atom, then stretched again. I was a puppet on broken strings, my limbs jerking uncontrollably. I could feel my memories fragmenting, my name, my past, my entire identity dissolving into the overwhelming noise. The static wasn't just around me, it was in me. It was my blood, my thoughts, my very soul. I looked down at my hands, or what used to be my hands. They were transparent, shimmering with the same code, the same symbols. I wasn't just seeing the glitch, I was the glitch. My mouth opened, not to scream, but to gasp a final horrifying realization as the last remnants of my humanity dissolved. I was becoming part of the broken fabric, an echo in the dreadful static. And as the last piece of my consciousness flickered, I saw it. Not a monster, not a demon, just an empty, endless void, filled with countless other fragmented echoes, all of us forever trapped within the shattered reality. My thoughts, once mine, are now just whispers in the endless hum. I am here, or what's left of me is. A memory of a person, a faint vibration in the vast broken code. I see them, the others, flickering like dead pixels in the periphery of my non-sight. Faces I almost recognize, moments I almost remember. We are all fragments, strung together by the same dreadful static, aware of our loss, but incapable of anything more than this silent, eternal scream. The void isn't empty. It's a graveyard of consciousness, a digital prison where identities dissolve into pure information. The horror isn't just being trapped. It's knowing that every flicker, every skipped beat, every misplaced shadow was leading me here, to this ultimate dissolution. There is no escape, no waking up, only the realization that the world I knew was just a thin veneer, a fragile screen, and I pressed too hard, looked too closely. So, tell me, have you ever seen a shadow stretch too long, or a sound cut out just for a beat? Have you ever felt that unsettling flicker, that momentary pause in the rhythm of everything? What if those aren't just glitches in your perception, but tiny tears in the fabric itself, waiting for you to fall through? What if you're next to join the echoes, just another whisper in the static? The void isn't empty. It's a graveyard of consciousness, a digital prison where identities dissolve into pure information. The horror isn't just being trapped. It's knowing that every flicker, every skipped beat, every misplaced shadow was leading me here, to this ultimate dissolution. There is no escape, no waking up, only the realization that the world I knew was just a thin veneer, a fragile screen, and I pressed too hard, looked too closely. So, tell me, have you ever seen a shadow stretch too long, or a sound cut out just for a beat? Have you ever felt that unsettling flicker, that momentary pause in the rhythm of everything? What if those aren't just glitches in your perception, but tiny tears in the fabric itself, waiting for you to fall through? What if you're next to join the echoes, just another whisper in the static?